Okay, so we have about 10 people on the call, and so I'd actually like to start the session already with a very warm welcome to everybody who is on the call, who has taken the time to come and join us. And I do see some new people, but quite a number of you who have joined us in previous National Training Week sessions that we've conducted so far as well. So my name is Dr. SHUNITRA. I'm actually a medical doctor by qualification, but I spent about 9 years in clinical practice. I was actually practicing in Hospital Kuala Lumpur and doing surgeries at the time. But after which I moved on to the pharmaceutical industry. I was there for about 18 years, where I was working on roles in the beginning at the local level, meaning to say Malaysia operations, leading a team of scientific officers, doctors and pharmacists who were doing regulatory work, clinical research work. And then I moved on after about 7 to 8 years to a regional role where I was managing Asia Pacific with a bigger team. And then to a global role as well, where my role as a leader became far more into designing strategies, governance in pharmaceutical industry, and leadership of business and brand management across markets around the globe. So very exciting career I've had. And since 2 years ago, I've actually left the pharmaceutical industry because I didn't really want to move out of Malaysia to pursue a career there further. And I've started Querist Consulting, which is a boutique consulting firm. We're still quite small. We're based out of Petaling Jaya. We're actually in Section 16, very close to University Malaya and UMMC hospitals. Because of my background in healthcare, I work quite a bit as well with the healthcare industry. But my passion is really around leadership, skill set development, and soft skills development for managers, leaders, and upcoming managers. So people who have an aspiration to go into leadership. So I give you a really warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about the game of trust, as you can see. Now, to start off, in my long career, trust has been an extremely important element of why I was able to get certain roles or why I was successful in leading a team or even how I became who I became in my career. Because a lot of you would realize, right? People who trust with you, want to partner with you, want to work with you, want to give you more responsibilities. So trust, we talk a lot about, but we often underestimate the power it has on our trajectory, be it in life, with people, or in our careers. So let me move on to the next slide, which is around a small exercise, because like I have my stories, I'm sure a lot of you have your own stories as well. But I want you to think about someone at your workplace who you trust today, right? And it doesn't matter who this person is, not necessarily your team or your manager. It could be in a workplace from before, but you must have a strong feeling that, yes, that's someone who I trust in the workplace, right? And think about what about them actually makes you trust them. For example, like a characteristic that you find in them that makes you want to trust them, right? And if I can, I want to kind of encourage you to be more interactive and engaging in this session as well. So we have a two-way conversation. And write that characteristic down in the chat box for me now. I'll just give you 1 more minute to think about who this person might be, right? I think for a lot of us, thinking about people from our family or people in our friends circle, that's quite easy to identify. But kind of scope your mind to think about people at work, because they're the difficult ones usually, right? So let me see, any answers in the chat box? For example, here I've given honesty, right? So honesty is when someone is truthful, honest, definitely we feel like we can trust them. But what else comes to mind to you when you think about this person that you trust? What is it they have or do? Any answers in the chat so far? We have about 10 people. Let me write something in the chat as well that comes to mind, right? For me, reliability is also one of it, right? Like I trust them because, like, say for instance, I depend on them for some help or something like that, right? They would be there and they won't let me down. I see some people typing. Teamwork, absolutely. Responsibility. Thank you, Lord. They always remain true to their words. Yes, this is somewhat related to the reliability I had in mind as well, right? I mean, like they when they promise something, they deliver usually. Absolutely. Great. Good answers. Great answers, actually. And you see, there's a lot of pattern in similarities between what we trust, right? Trustworthy, absolutely. But this is also something that is a little bit about intuition, isn't it? I mean, like with time, you get this sense from inside. It's not necessarily, trust is not necessarily something where there's a checklist and you tick each one of these things. There's more than one or two of these words that stand out for you in your gut feel, usually, when it comes to someone that you think you will trust, right? Especially when it's something important or big. For example, in business partnerships, you will be a lot more cautious about, do you trust this person or not? With friendship, it's a little bit less than business partnerships, but then there is this gut feel as well, right? Now, moving further, an important point is that I don't think any one of us would deny or would argue that is it really important, right? So we're here today to learn about how to build trust or the game of trust. I don't think any one of us on the call, we're about 11 people on the call today. I don't think any one of us would agree or disagree, would disagree that trust is important, right? But the point I want to raise here is even though we all know trust is important for everything we do in our personal lives and at work, how intentional are we about building it? Right? Is it something we take for granted that I just keep doing what I do at my work every day and, it will somehow people will trust me? Or you just randomly look for things in other people as well, in terms of whether they would trust or not? And this is the tough part about it. Not being intentional about it is not because we don't want to be intentional, because it's such a hard skill. Trust is not a soft skill. Leadership is a soft skill. Why? Because it is something you can learn. There are techniques to it and you can try and do it, right? Trust is something that comes out of soft skills. It's almost like a result of soft skills. Good leadership will get you trust with your teammates. Good leadership would get you trust with your higher management, right? So trust is really quite a difficult one. It is hard to earn because you have to keep doing things repeatedly. It is hard to hold on to because when you slip, it can be broken. It's hard to repair as well because it takes quite a bit of effort when you slip. And the real foundation of it is that when you do have trust, you have strong relationships, strong teams, relationship with your manager. And even if you take it to your personal life, you have a strong relationship with the people you interact to or interact with on a day-to-day basis, family, friends, people at work, right? Now, moving on, today's objectives. So we all agree trust is important. We all, maybe some of us are intentional about it, but not always. So we want to learn a few things out of the next somewhat 90 minutes to 2 hours. We want to learn what it takes to build trust. So how to build trust. It's also important when you want to be intentional in building trust that you discover who to build trust with strategically. You identify them, you understand what makes trust fail and how to repair it, perhaps. And also, I want to give you some tools that you can then work with because lessons like this, it's only great when you are able to take something back, put that into habit and practice. And over time, you realize, oh, yes, that day when I learned something like this and I've tried to work with it, it's actually changed my behavior, right? So I'm big on behavioral change. Now we talked a little bit so far about individuals. Who do we trust, and why do we trust that particular person? But in our workplaces, companies usually, multinational companies or local companies, a lot of companies have this thing called values. And very often, 90% of the time, you will find one of the values that a company aspires to have is trust, right? Because they understand the importance of how that almost builds the foundation of productivity, collaboration between team members, uh, whether there is a follow through between managers and the rest of the organization. So, trust is a very important component about almost anything you touch to be successful in a company, right? So my question is this. Now, most of you are probably in a workspace or in a company working on a particular role. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel workplace that you're working in today values trust? Is it something they constantly display? Is it something they uh, would uh, probably promote or advocate? It's someone who they actually kind of like, put in leadership positions has demonstrated trust. How important do they see trust in that company, right? So put that in the chat box as well. Just a number between 1 to 5. Um, Preferably avoid 3 because that's literally sitting on the fence. But if you think your company or your workplace values trust on a higher scale, then pin 4 or 5. If you think your workplace, but they talk about trust, but there doesn't seem to be evidence of really valuing trust, or they break trust quite regularly, then maybe you want to give it a lower score of 1 or 2. Now, let's have a look in the chat about what you think your scoring is for your particular. I see Farah, very nice. 4 for team and department, 1 for management. Yes, you could look at it that way as well, rather than probably putting the whole organization in a bucket, right? Sometimes it's within certain teams, there is strong value of trust. But within the wider organization or different clusters in the organization, there is lower value of trust. Anyone else wants to rate their workplace and the value of trust in the workplace? But it's absolutely great, Farah, that at least within the team and department, you have 4, right? Because where work actually happens, where impact really is created, is within the lower ranks of the organization most often, right? So that's where productivity is, and it's more important, to be honest, where trust has to be. Any other answers? All right, typing as well. I want to tell you at this point a little story as well, right? So the picture you see here, it's not just decorative for the slide, but meet Maya. She's a young company admin, so a secretary or a personal assistant, basically. And she's someone who is always having a lot of ideas, right? And she shares these ideas because she sees a lot of people coming to her from various departments or various areas of the organization. And she often sees in the work she does how things can be done differently, how efficiency can be improved, how collaboration perhaps can be enhanced. Where are the issues or problems? What's not going well, right? And very often in an organization, we tend to look at the secretary or the department assistant as low contributing roles. You're just there to get things done, which is absolutely not the way to look at it, right? Because they are where a lot of things come together. They are some people who see the organization in a much broader perspective than individuals who are working on technical or specific areas. So they often do have a lot of input that can be very valuable in growing the organization, right? But in Maya's case, this wasn't so. Very often, when she raised these ideas of how to do things differently, or what's not going well, or what's going well, her manager would just say, "Okay, good. Thank you very much. Just get the work I asked you to do done, right? Can you do them faster, in fact, right?" And Maya was very discouraged by it. When someone is voicing out their personal views to improve the organization and gets shut down, not only does this say that, why do you not trust me in what I'm saying? Is it because of the position I hold? But it also demotivates and demoralizes this person. So the more you actually suppress such conversations, the more you are showing that you don't value trust, and the more you are creating demoralized, demotivated employees in your organization. But the story here is it didn't stop Maya. What Maya did was she spoke to a few other people. There were other department assistants from other departments. When she was having coffee or lunch with them, she would share these ideas. They agreed as well. And there were some managers who heard about these ideas from their department assistants who shared it with their managers that, hey, Maya said this. Maya said, this was something we could do like this. What do you think about it? And fortunately, there were managers who listened to their department assistants' inputs and they heard of Maya, right? And the good thing was when there were certain projects that were coming up in the organization, these other managers actually said, hey, there's someone called Maya. She works in this department and she came up with some brilliant ideas. I think we want to have her on the project, right? And when Maya's manager heard Maya's name coming from other managers, this was something he just couldn't shut down because there were more people in the organization who were actually speaking about Maya, right? So, from this story, there is one thing I do want you to take away though. Right now, trust is something that, of course, is great to have when the rest of the organization displays as well. But that's really ideal. Very rarely you're in an organization where you get that kind of trust, right? But the good news is, from Maya's story, you don't really need to change everyone. You just need to build bridges and keep building bridges with more people, and you will end up building bridges with the right people, right? So it is hard, but don't give up because there are pockets of trust. And just like how Farah mentioned, 4 for her team or department, 1 for management, right? So if the person you are only speaking to at all times is your manager who doesn't value trust, yes, it'll feel like a wall. Speak to more people, and perhaps the right people will be the people who hear about you and speak for you and advocate for you, right? So this is also about you taking lead of still demonstrating values of trust. Now, so we come to this point about how do you strategically determine who are these kinds of people that you need to build trust with, right? Who do you have trust with already? Who are some people that come to mind when you're saying you're working around building more trust with? And who are some people who are totally like outer circle, no trust, right? So I want you to do this short exercise, and you don't have to share this outputs in the chat box. But if you have a piece of paper or anything you can write on, draw these 3 circles: an inner circle, a middle circle, and an outer circle, right? And I want you to think about in your workplace, who is the 1 or 2 people that are totally, very clearly, 100% in your inner circle, meaning people that are you feel safe to build trust with, or you already have deep trust in these individuals, right? Who are people who you work with quite regularly, but maybe still are not in your inner circle? Maybe they're in the middle circle or the outer circle, but are important people you work with, right? So when I say people you work with, this could be your teammates, this could be managers, this could be projects you're part of where there are a wider group of people. This could be functions that you need to work very closely with to be successful at what you do at your job as well, right? So think about this. Who is in your inner circle? Who is in your middle circle? And who is in your outer circle? And this particular trust mapping exercise is something you can do right now, or if you need more time to think, you can always have this. Just draw these 3 circles on any piece of paper you find and have a moment to sit down and think about. And what I would also advocate is that you kind of do this regularly at about like a quarterly, once in 3 months or once in 6 months, reevaluate. Now, if I want to be successful in what I'm doing, where I'm working at, who's in my inner circle, who's not in my middle circle, and who's in my outer circle. And the key is also to ask yourself, who would you like to move inward? Who is in right now in the middle circle or outer circle, but extremely important that they trust me and I trust them. So move to the inner circle, right? And also ask a question about why is it important that particular effort is required to move that person from that outer or middle circle to your inner circle, right? Or at least one circle inwards. Now, why? Could be a variety of reasons. Could be because this person so far is important to your progress at work, but doesn't know you much, doesn't trust you much, or doesn't kind of like, advocate for you. Or it could be someone who needs to know about you, needs to have visibility about you for a particular promotion you're looking for, right? Or it could be even a more difficult situation. It could be someone who is giving you a real hard time at work. And we all have this one employee or one manager who is like, no matter what you do, will give you a hard time. And that hard time can be a little less hard time if you worked a little bit on building trust with this person, right? So this is the power of trust mapping and how trust can be built with a little bit more strategic, intentional kind of approach rather than a random approach, right? So do this exercise. If you can, and if you already have names right now, these are the 3 questions to ponder about. And these will be your worksheet of who you're going to work on or what kind of work you're going to do on, right? So moving forward, I want to give you a very simple way of when it comes to how to build trust, behaviors or actions you can do almost every day, right? And there's an acronym here so that it's easy to remember as well. How to build trust? Use the trust framework. And we'll go into each one of this in a little bit more detail just shortly. But T stands for, what we talked about earlier, honesty. Tell the truth. That's the first behavior. Second is respect small commitments. And I think, it came up in the chat as well earlier. Farah mentioned as well. They do what they say they will do, right? It came up in my example as well as to reliability. So even if it is small commitments, they will respect it. U stands for understand before reacting, which, in other words, is more around minimize assumptions, because assumptions half the time could be right or half the time could be wrong. But if you move based on assumptions, then people look at you as, I don't know, got that wrong most of the time. Maybe you're not trustworthy. So seek to understand before reacting. S is share openly, right? A lot of times, I'm sure you can picture in your workplace, there are some people who are a total open book. Anything you ask them, they will give you a really long, detailed story. And there are some people the complete opposite. You ask them something, they'll give you 1-word or 2-word answers. Very closed book, right? Now, who would you trust better? A person who usually shares openly. Now, this is also what we usually sometimes called as transparency is something that builds trust at an organization level, right? And the last one, T, is thank others. Now, appreciation is something that's very important to build trust as well. Someone who constantly comes to you and says, hey, I like what you did. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and effort you put into that, right? Is someone you feel you can trust better. Is someone you feel closer to, right? As opposed to someone who's like, I don't know, it's just your work, right? Or, yeah, fine, I noticed it. There's nothing big to talk about, right? You're always like, why is this person like that? And when you have a question about a person, you rarely will trust that person, right? So T.R.U.S.T, the truth, respecting commitments, understand before you react, share openly, and thank others is a simple acronym you can keep in mind. Now, and based on the previous examples like Maya and all that I talked about as well, right? It's important to remember building trust is a responsibility of every single person in every type of position in the organization. You don't need a title to actually build trust. You need habits. Habits meaning you need actions or behaviors that you repeatedly show. That's what a habit is, right? It's an action or behavior that people see repeatedly in you. That's a habit. And here are the 5 ones that are within your control, actually, when you think about it. To tell the truth, you don't need anyone else. It's just you. Your commitments, you respect them, right? To understand, you ask questions. To share, you decide how much and what you want to tell, right? And to thank others, honestly, it's about putting in your calendar to say, have I said something nice to my team? Or have I said thank you to someone who's done something nice, right? And this you can do even when trust you feel is missing around you. For example, in Farah's case here, to say one for management, even with leadership, if you display this, sometimes that helps them reflect back or mirror your kind of way of approach to certain things, right? And the last one I want to say is these 5 actions that you can do every day to build trust is actually a power, right? Trust is a power. When you have people around you who trust you, that is actually building power, right? You're not just something that is like, uh, you don't, whatever position you're holding today, it does not mean that I can't build trust or I don't have a title or why should it be me, right? Now, trust is a power. When you build trust, you get this power. And that just starts with these kinds of simple behaviors. And if you keep check on how you are actually doing any one of these or all of these, and how you show up changes, how people look at you changes. And when you get trust, people treat you differently. People see that power in you, right? So now let's look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. But let me pause. Any questions so far or any comments so far from anyone in the chat? Of course, you can unmute yourself and speak as well. Does this resonate with you? So far, so good. Is the pace okay for you as well? All good? Any input? Yes, so far, so good. Thank you, Lo. Okay, so we'll move into the first trust behavior, which is telling the truth. Yeah, and feel free to put in a question, or you want me to pause, or you want to talk a little bit more, or you don't understand something. Always just feel free to put that in the chat box, right? So I can visualize it. So when it comes to telling the truth, I think you'll agree with me. Trust is built by truth far more long lasting as well than someone who's trying to be perfect, right? People trust honesty over cover ups. Now, what does this mean? You know, a lot of times, even like it may happen in your day to day work as well, or it happens with like my line of work, consultancy, where people come to you and you're expected to know everything, or you're expected to know all the answers, or you're expected to know in depth about everything, right? Not true, really, but you have to have courage to say when you don't know something that you don't know something, but you'll find out, or even admit this is something that's not really my area of expertise, but I can find you someone who you can speak to get that information instead, right? So truth builds trust faster than perfection. And people trust honesty even when they don't get what they're asking for from you, rather than you pretending like you know everything, right? Pretending to make up. Now, in my corporate career as well, so I used to have teammates reporting to me from all over the world. And, you know, I had about, at one point when I was doing a regional role, where I had people all the way from South Africa right down to Asia reporting through to me. They were in 55 different countries. And I, as the leader of these 55 different markets, am not able to know everything that's going on in all of these markets all the time. So my boss always understands that it's impossible for me to know everything in 55 countries, right? But of course, they do expect me to know the more important things or the most important things in the most important countries, as well as maybe in general across the whole region, right? So this part I do take care of. But when I say for instance, he asks me, uh, do you know what's happening in South Africa with this? There seems to be some complaints around what is happening with that deliverable. And then I'll say, oh, that's a little bit strange. But you know what? It is important. Let me go and find that out for you. I will drop you an email just after this call. Or let me go and have a chat with the person who is leading in South Africa to me. And then I will call you back if there's something important that I need to discuss further or update you about. Right. And this keeps our trust of working relationship. Now imagine if I were to lie about it. And I say, no, I think that deliverables all on track. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think the team member is good. No, the boss will accept that, but he may get the sense that that doesn't seem right. Now, when that kind of response triggers that kind of sensation in my leader, that usually makes the leader not want to trust me. You know what will happen? He will probably go around directly to my team member in South Africa and try to ask if everything is okay. Or he may go about asking other people around what's happening in my region. And that then becomes something like not a very nice thing for me to work with a boss who goes behind my back and asks other people about what's going on, right? And if he finds out a different answer, he may confront me in a not polite way. He may say, I thought you said everything is going well, but clearly it doesn't look like so, right? And that then erodes trust. Now, when such things erode trust, especially when it's not, when people find out you lied or you covered up something even though you were not aware of it, or you made up stories about something they wanted to know from you, then trust erodes. These managers will likely begin to micromanage. They will likely begin to want to have more conversations with you regularly, not because you need to have those conversations, but to check up on whether you are on the ball or not, right? So, likewise for me, when I was having calls with all of my managers in these 50 different countries, I could tell who would admit to not knowing something and find out versus who would make up stories, right? And my leadership style will also change accordingly. Because when someone is lying to me, this is not doing them good or me good. And it's not doing me any good in terms of being able to manage all of these geographies and be respectful to my management around what's happening, right? So trust, it's important to start with the truth, right? So how do you do this? Simple. Say what you mean, say it kindly and clearly. Don't exaggerate, sugarcoat, or avoid difficult conversations, right? And this is even if your manager is a very difficult person, or your manager is like um, I don't know, like a fire breathing dragon, is what we call most of the time, right? Be kind, be polite, and just say, I'm very sorry. I do not know this at the moment, but I'm definitely going to find this out for you, right? Even the hardest of managers would accept that little bit of extra time for you to find it out, right? And admit when you don't know. Now, when I say this, I also want you to keep in mind it is not just the words that are coming out of your mouth, but it's also the verbal cues you're giving. And this is a very big tell very often. You know, when people are covering up, you would see there's a difference between their body language. Maybe they're not holding eye contact with you. Maybe they don't come across sincere. And there is like, breaks in the way they're saying things, right? So it is very difficult for you to actually um, get away with lies and cover ups as well. Note that the person you're talking to, and this is where that intuition or gut feel about whether you trust what this person is saying or not comes in for that other person. And they can usually smell it, right? So build on T, which is tell the truth, say what you mean, don't exaggerate, don't avoid hard conversations, and more importantly, very sincerely admit what you don't know, but commit to find out or commit to or commit to connect this person to someone who will know this better, right? Now, the second trust behavior is R, respect small commitments. Now, what do we mean by respecting small commitments? You don't need to do really grand gestures, or it's not the really showing that you can make a big project happen, or you can deliver a very big deliverable, or you can surprise people with your capability and potential. That's not what builds trust, actually. That shows capability. Oh, look at this person, they took on that huge project and they did a really good job. That builds abilities and capability and potential that is recognizable by others around you. But trust is built in small gestures and daily repeat reliability, right? I've got a nice small example here, which happens almost all the time. And trust me, it happens to every one of us, including your CEO and the managers, right? You can't meet deadlines all the time. Something happens, something goes wrong, something is not delivered to you, and you can't, right? But the best way to build trust here is to let people know upfront. Just send an email that says, yes, I said I will email the slides today, but I'm sorry I'm unable to, and explain why you couldn't, right? That goes a long way in respecting small commitments. Of course, 90% of the time, deliver them. If you said you will have your slides ready by 5 p.m. this Friday, really work on that, because the person who always stays true to what they promise to deliver, however small, if you promise to turn up somewhere, if you promise to email something, if you promise to get a response, even from the first one, if I said, I'm sorry, I don't know, but I will go and find out, find out. If you don't find out and come back and report to them within the next day or so, that is again not respecting your small commitments, right? So I think this one is not very hard for us to understand, because most of us, if we are not trusting someone, this is probably the reason we don't. Someone who said they will do something and they just don't. Every time this person says they will do so many things, but they don't deliver most of it, right? Then you don't trust this person. So the simple way here is, keep in mind the three actions to follow here. Always follow through, even on small things. Don't overpromise. If you can't do it by Friday, then you don't have to say you will do it by Friday, right? Just say when is the right time. Negotiate if you have to. Sometimes your boss will say, no, I can't have it Friday. I need it on Wednesday. Have a conversation. Here's why I think I can't deliver it on Wednesday. Maybe I will try my best for Wednesday, but if I really can't, is Friday okay for you? How can we do this? Or what else can I deprioritize to move this forward to Wednesday and maybe shift something else to Friday for you, right? So conversations like this, but avoid overpromising, and avoiding to overpromise and delivering majority of the time builds you trust. But this is also not the easy thing to do, because to be able to do this, you need to make sure that someone that you're promising to is reasonable enough to accept and mature enough to have this conversation with you, right? So I understand that can be a challenge, and not all times you will get it, but try for most of the times, right? And of course, if something is changing, let people know early. Now, I've had so many examples. In my line of work, there are a lot of times people will set meetings to have a conversation with me to give them strategic advice on the consulting aspects, right? And I would turn up to these meetings and that person would suddenly not be around. Or someone would say, oh my goodness, that person actually had to go to something urgent. And I'll be like, why couldn't you have let me know? At least I would not have taken the time to drive all the way, which usually takes about an hour to get to some place and get ready for a meeting and be prepared, right? So if something is changing, just let people know as early as you know. Of course, if it happened 1 minute before, it's a bit difficult, and I would very much understand, right? So if something is changing, let people know as early as possible, and that would actually build trust for you. People will be far more forgiving and acceptable, right? Now, the third behavior is often something that is around bias and assumptions, right? Which really deliberately deteriorates trust you might have with someone. Now, understand before reacting is very common in low trust workplaces. So, for example, like in Farah's case, she says 4 for her team, 1 for management. If most of the other teams were also around 1 or 2, that's a low trust workplace, right? Where people assume the worst, and people generally do all the things that we've talked about, don't do the things we've just talked about. They not necessarily tell the truth. They tend to cover up or make up stories for any time they're asked certain questions. Uh, they probably, don't really deliver on their deliverables on time. Um, They say they will do something, but then after that, they would say, did I really say I will do that? I don't think so. Change their stories and not deliver. Now, these are low trust workplaces. Now, when a lot of people around you are doing this, two things can happen. One is you tend to assume, right? So even if the person says, okay, no problem, I will make sure we get the hotel secured, you would assume the worst. Yeah, they will always say, but they won't do, right? But if you slow down, and this is what understand before reacting means, right? If you slow down and you ask someone the context, this will go a long way. So, like, have this conversation. I know you are willing to do this, but are you really able to do it? Because there were times when you said you would do things before, but you couldn't manage to, right? And this is really, do you need any help to be able to do it, right? So I think this is in a low trust environment, particularly more important to have such conversations. If someone promises and doesn't deliver, or if someone usually tends to make up stories that you find out was not actually the truth, don't assume this will be their behavior every single time. There can be circumstances that explain such behavior. It could be that they completely were overwhelmed and they forgot, and that's why it didn't happen the last time or the last few times. It could be that they thought that was the real story or the truth, or someone told them a different uh, story, which was what they told you without realizing was not the truth, right? So understand before reacting is to check and to give people almost, benefit of a doubt is what we usually say, right? And when you do that, that actually helps you to build a bridge that others won't forget. You're having a polite conversation, right? And between manager and employee as well, this is an extremely important context. This is probably the most important one because in a relationship between a manager and employee, that's a lot of taking for granted. Like your manager has the authority, you have to kind of report whatever he needs or wants or asks for, right? Your manager often tends to make a perception of what he sees of your work. And that may not necessarily be the whole truth or understanding everything you go through before you actually are able to do what you have done so far, right? So having these conversations, understanding is to clarify assumptions or to check assumptions or to even give feedback and have this conversation. Really, that conversation builds trust. And that conversation builds trust for the next time things happen as well, that person will not be afraid to come and check with you rather than assuming, right? So to build trust by understanding before reacting, always ask yourself as well, am I being judgmental here? Am I working on a bias that I've preconceived about this person? And ask questions before judging, right? And second is get curious instead of defensive. Even if someone says, you didn't deliver the last few times. You always said you will do, but you didn't, right? So rather than being defensive, it's like, what do you mean I didn't deliver? I did. You didn't notice, or you didn't get to know about it, or you thought that was someone else who did it, but actually it was me, right? So rather than that kind of a defensive approach, get curious. Say, why do you say so? What makes you think I didn't deliver that? Because I think I did. Can you help me understand who do you think delivered it? Or what do you think happened there that I was supposed to do, which I didn't do, right? Then the person would actually say, no, you said it, but I didn't see it at all in the list. Your name wasn't even there. You didn't even turn up. I'm like, no, maybe it was missed out on the list, right? So having that conversation, which is curiosity based and seeking to clarify what this person actually made an assumption about, rather than being defensive, builds trust, builds future conversations, right? And same way, always kind of seek to understand where is this person coming from, right? Seek to understand what is this person's intention as well before you actually get to be defensive or jump to a conclusion is what people mostly would say, right? So don't jump to conclusions. Ask a lot of questions. Be polite in the way you ask questions, and realize that you being willing to have such curious conversations is already building trust, is already saying that, hey, I want to work together about this, rather than assume you're not going to trust me and I'm not going to trust you, but we will just get things done anyways, right? Now, the fourth behavior is about sharing openly. Now, this one, I would say, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. And let me explain a little bit more, right? Now, trust grows when people feel included. Like in the beginning, when I told you, um, there's some people you can recognize and you will trust because they're an open book. If you ask them, they would actually just tell you the whole story. And there are some people, if you ask them, will just tell you, or may even ask you, like, why do you asking? Why do you want to know? And they will just tell you exactly what you asked them, meaning to say, I'll tell you what you need to know rather than what you're really asking to know, right? Now, these people you would tread cautiously. And I know there are lots of people who you would be able to recognize right now who is this open book and who are people who behave that way when you ask a question, right? And you will be able to realize that, yes, obviously you will trust the open book. Now, an example here is sharing context. Sometimes people are always so busy, they forget to let you know of certain things you may need to know to be able to do your work really well as well, right? Here, the person you would trust is someone who comes and says, like, for your info, this is happening in the background. So maybe you need to know to adjust the way you're working, right? For example, especially in like complex situations, like maybe a group of people are putting together an event, right? And somebody realizes that, oh, we actually might need to change the date because we couldn't get the venue, right? So someone who lets the rest of the people know, maybe the person who is working on sending out invitations, for example, so just to let you know, this is happening in the background. The date may change, although it hasn't at the moment, because we're having a little bit of a challenge with securing the venue that we want for that particular change, right? Now, if you went ahead and did all of this, and the leader never let you know about this particular change that was important, instead, sometimes bad leaders, they will actually come back and tell you, why were you not, how is it that you didn't know? You're part of the project team. And you're thinking, how was I supposed to know when I'm so busy trying to compile all of the attendance lists when you're the project leader who should have informed me, right? So this is the difference between whether you will trust someone or not. Someone who takes care of your interests and shares openly things that and thinks about you and shares openly things you will need to know to be successful at what you do is the kind of person you will trust at work versus someone who is the opposite, right? Or worse still, someone who blames you for not having to take an interest and known about things that are going on anyways, right? So sharing context and sharing updates, insights, thinking about people and what they would need. And if you had a piece of information, right? Or if you had a piece of a tool or certain, let's say a system or something that someone gave you and said, try it this way, this will work, right? A solution. Share those things with others. Others will find you as a trustworthy person, right? Don't keep people guessing or in the dark. This is the example where I told you the leader just thinks everybody should just go and figure out what they need to know from whoever they need to know, right? And um, build transparency because basically, even if the leader, like the example I shared just now, was someone who does not do his job of making sure everybody knows the things they need to know to be able to effectively work, it doesn't mean you then stop sharing things that you know as well, right? So this situation could have changed if that person working on venue as well had contacted you and said, hey, I know you're working on attendance and invitations, but I'm having a challenge with the venue, right? So even if the leader doesn't do it, everyone actually trying to do this better actually will build trust in that particular working team, right? Now, coming back to the story of why, when I started this trust behavior, I said it could be a double-edged sword as well. Now, sometimes in toxic work environments, people will take advantage of this particular behavior in individuals and manipulate that to actually destroying trust you might build, right? So, for example, sharing too much sometimes would make people then take that information, share it with someone else, and maybe change that way they share it about you and make that about you in a negative way, right? So when I say share openly, it is with caveats to build trust, right? So particularly share things that are important to share because everybody needs to know this to be successful together, right? And remember that trust circle, trust mapping that we just did earlier. Now, when you work on this trust behavior 4, keep that map very closely in your visibility, right? So to the people who are in the inner circle, you can be more open and you can be more relaxed about how much you share, what you share, and how you share it. With the people who are in your middle circle, means you trust them somewhat, but they're not really, or maybe you're not really sure whether you can really trust them. You can share things, but be a little bit more cautious and measured, meaning to say, plan how you want to say what you want to say. Check yourself. Do they really need to know this? And if they know this, why would they, what would be different? And if they didn't know this, what would be the consequences? That usually would help you figure out how much to share with the middle circle. The ones in the outer circles who you have very low trust with at the moment, or who you don't trust. Now, these people, you have to first determine whether it's critical that they know something you need to share, right? And second, work on how you can move them further into the inner circles if they need to be in inner circles for you, and then slowly expand how much you share with them, right? Or if they are in your outer circle, but they don't really need to be in an inner circle, then by all means, you can decide not to share things if it doesn't change any consequence. And when I say consequence, it's two things. It's not always just about whether it makes you look good or it's threatening to you, but it's also for the bigger purpose of the company's goals, right? So if there's something that they do need to know because the company goal needs to be achieved with that information at their hands, then share that, but share that in maybe a documented form. So they can't sort of like, change what you said or assume you didn't say so or tell other people you didn't tell a lie about it, right? So write an email and say, hey, so and so, I wanted to share this with you because I think there is implications of how you would do this with this information moving forward. Here it goes, right? Share it in an email or share it in something that like a WhatsApp where you still have documentation that you shared it, right? So use the trust mapping circle to guide how much you share. And you make a decision on situations and specific individuals that you want to build trust. And sharing openly builds trust, but you will gate this according to how well you can go with certain situations and certain individuals, right? So this one, extremely important behavior, extremely impactful to building trust, but use it by thinking about it every single time, right? Now, the last one, which is thank others. Now, this is a very free and easy one. It builds trust because people remember how you make them feel, and how you make them feel is usually around how much you appreciate them, right? When you thank someone specifically, they really will remember that, they will feel seen, they will trust you more, right? What does specifically mean? Something like, hey, thank you so much for spending that extra hour to work on that particular document for me, because I know it was difficult for you on that day. You had so many things going on and you wanted to go home early, but I really appreciate the fact because of that extra hour you put in, I was able to do this and get it too. So thank you so much, right? So I really want you to know I appreciate it. You can even go a step further and saying, maybe let me buy you coffee sometime. Maybe let me take you out to lunch another time. I really, really thank you. When you say something like that with a lot of sincerity, really telling them that you saw what they did for you, which was special, you saw how they went further on a mile out for you, and that then makes them want to trust you. That then makes them feel like, hey, You are someone who's open. You are someone who actually sees me. You're someone who I actually would trust, right? So this one here, unlike the last one, which was share openly, whether you're building trust or you're not, to me, this is a fundamental element that makes people likable in organizations, that makes people um, connect with others easier, right? And also makes people appear like they are observant and aware of what people other than themselves are doing in the organization, right? At a leadership level, this is extremely important. I can't tell you um, how much a leader who is non-appreciative or not thankful not only doesn't get the trust of his team, but would find it very difficult to get their teams, to get the teams to even do the jobs they are hired to do most of the time, right? Again, going back to my time and story, I used to make it a point every time I have a one-on-one conversation with each one of my leaders, I will always end the call by saying, hey, thank you so much. I'm not in the same place as you. We don't see each other every day, but trust me, I know how hard you're working. I know the problems you're trying to solve. And I really appreciate the fact that you are going through so much of an effort to make this work for yourself and your team and us as a team. And that really goes a really, really long way. And I mean this every single time I say this to them and I speak of this in the calls. They always know it, right? Because I'm specific. I don't end the call with a script, right? A script often then becomes, yeah, of course, she's going to say this at every end of the call, right? And that's no longer special. That's no longer building trust. Um, People may even think, are you just being dishonest? This part of the conversation, right? So I always think I know what's going on with them. I know what's troubling them. I know when they work extra hard. I know when they put in a lot of hours. And I know when they're struggling in their personal lives as well. And sometimes I cut them a little more, special privileges at those times as well. And when I thank them each week or once in 2 weeks, we used to have a call. I always talk about that specifically between what's going on in their area of work and mine and say that, And the same goes here in thanking others, say sorry as well, equally importantly, right? So when you make a mistake, admit it, which we saw that in telling the truth. But here it's also about that. And, like we had a hard conversation about something that wasn't going so well. I would end the call similarly and say, hey, look, I really thank you for the effort you're trying. I really thank and appreciate the fact that you're trying so hard, right? And I'm really sorry I had to be really tough on you during that particular time because I wasn't sure we were going to make it, but I appreciate it. And I'm here to help you however you want. That builds trust. That conversation builds trust, right? Particularly when leadership is in a remote setting, when you're not seeing this person every day. Leaders may think you're not doing work at all, right? And those are the assumptions that you put away. And these are the kind of appreciations that build trust in that long distance kind of working relationship as well. So here, don't just appreciate the effort or the results, really sincerely have a specific story that you tell and praise the person for it, right? And believe me, no matter how much you don't like someone, even the managers that you are, maybe someone you hate in your organization right now, if you sit down and think about it, you will be able to find something they're good at. You will be able to say, I really don't like that person. Honestly, she's really good at that, right? And that's what you appreciate. That's what you praise. That's what you acknowledge in the trust behavior 5, which is about celebrating and thanking someone, right? So these are the 5 behaviors. Now, I've talked for quite a bit and quite deliberately. I wanted to tell you stories and make you understand each one of these 5 letters first. Now, I want you to, think about everything I've shared. Think about things that you have gone through, the people who are in your mind right now around, do I trust them? Do they trust me? It's 2 ways, right? You're thinking in terms of that. Now, first, I want you to see which letter of T.R.U.S.T that we've talked about now, and write this in the chat, please. Do you think you already do well? Or let's say, do you think you do best, right? Now, remember T.R.U.S.T? The first one is tell the truth. R is respect your commitments, even your smallest commitments. U is don't make assumptions, but instead understand the context, right, of what is going on. F is sharing openly, right? Like whatever you have that works, solutions, tools, information, resources. You often share this with people so that they also can do better. And last T is about thanking. Now, maybe write the letter for me. If it is T, write T in the chat. If it is U, write U in the chat, right? Take a minute to think about everything we've talked so far as well. Anyone? I'm going to write what I feel most comfortable, or I feel like out of these 5, which is my dominant strength, right, in building trust. For me would be S, sharing openly. How about a few of the others who are on the call? I know some of you joined us a little bit later. So anything that you heard so far, or how much you were able to hear at least, and which element of trust? Telling the truth, Akma, absolutely wonderful. Quite a brave thing, actually. You know, we underestimate the amount of courage it takes to tell the truth all the time. But this kind of courage is what builds trust. Anybody else? You know, for me, how do I know sharing openly out of all the others is my dominant strength? Is because it's also why I kind of went into training and leadership development. I really like teaching people things that I figured out or I know or I experienced, you know, and teaching people because I think the more people know what I have discovered or more people know what I have learned or figured out, um, the more success you actually get all around you in the people around you, right? So for me, it's not so much of what I think I do well, maybe. It's almost like what inspires me to do the most out of the 5 there, right? I see Lowe's answer. T, S, and T, R, and U, practicing to do better. Absolutely. All 5 of these are very important, but no one is equally like 100% good on all 5 of it. Impossible because we're humans at the end of the day, right? So today's lesson, actually, I hope is more around you recognizing that if you have these 5 elements, you can do wonders and take the power in your hands of being able to build trust with whoever you want and being able to earn trust from whoever you want, right? And so it's just about being intentional with building trust. And when you know which ones already you're doing well and which ones you need to work more on, you're going to see extremely improved benefits of how you're approaching building trust, right? I see more people trying to type as well. I'll keep sharing. I want to go to a second question, actually, in the same way. So I think Lo answered this already. She's going to work on R and U to focus on this week, right? And Akma said telling the truth. I said sharing openly. Now, the second question I want to ask is almost like which one you think you're least demonstrating most of the time, right? Which one you think you are probably not doing as much as you can in the way you build trust or earn trust, right? I see more Sharath is saying respect and trust need to be earned or otherwise. Obviously, Sharath, definitely. You definitely need to think of this as two ways, is what I said, right? Now, for you to be able to earn trust, you need to display all five of these behaviors on a regular basis consistently. And that then become your hallmark of people recognizing, hey, this person is trustworthy, right? Because, and it's a nice question you ask, Sharif, because you see, like when I want to trust someone, I may not look at all five. I may have something that's very important to me. Say, for example, sharing information might be the one that I determine whether this person is trustworthy or not, right? And so if I think this person I want to trust or not, I think about, did they withhold information from me regularly, or did they actually share information with me? Were they sharing tools that they learned? Were they honest about what they did, right? So that then earns you trust. So displaying these earn you trust. And again, when you assess people as well, you will base it on what you think you need to display to earn that trust, right? I hope that answers your question a little bit. Farah says telling the truth, and S sharing openly. I did this most of the time without realizing. Absolutely. Because these things are your innate behavior. They are almost like your true values as a human being of how you exist and show up in the world, right? So good on you for recognizing that these are already strengths, and recognizing them as strengths now connects that to this is how you're building trust in the world as well, Farah, to yourself, right? And now currently trying to improve on other aspects. Akma says, understand before reacting, sometimes easily jump to conclusion. We're all humans, we do this. It takes practice to be able to suppress that bias as well sometimes, right? So one thing I would have sort of advise is write down a list of three things that you think you're very biased about, right? With regards to individuals sometimes or situations sometimes, and then always recognize before reacting. Is this one of my known biases? Is that why I feel this way? Like I don't like this person, or I want to say no to this person, or want to say no, or I have bad feelings about the situation, right? So there's a good way of writing down your biases and keeping that as a checklist. I will go to this and then I will see if this fits in the list. Then I think I will check again. Am I understanding before reacting? Right? Farah says, I think the least for me is you. Really need to be patient and understand others. Yes, not surprising. See, same like Akma. And honestly, I would share for me as well, it is the same, right? I am aware of certain things that I have a bias upon, and sometimes it's certain people that I have a bias upon, right? From preconceived, uh, you know, perceptions about them, or maybe behaviors that they showed before. Um, but I also know a little bit. Like for me, there's some people who become biased about a person based on what they heard others say about that person, right? So for me, it's not so much of that, but it is my experience with that person that creates sometimes a bias. There are some people who listen to what others say, and that's an even harder bias to overcome, right? But knowing your bias, absolutely. Shara said, do our parents and family members need to earn respect and trust? Yeah. So, I qualified this in the beginning as well a little bit, right? I want to keep this trust building specifically to our workplace today, also because that is somewhere where building trust or not is a little bit more objective, Sharath, right? And purposeful. Like you want to build trust with your teammates because you want them to be working well with you. You want them to share information with you, and you want to share information with them. You want to own things together, right? Now, the challenge comes with family, friends, close friends, and parents, right? Of course, it's important to build trust and maintain trust even more than your workplace individuals. But it's a little different and harder because emotions get in the way here. It's hard to take parents, family members, husband, wife, or very close friends, and even teachers, like you talk about here, and take the emotion out, right? Now, I would say it's hard also because whether it's your mom or your dad, if they are behaving to you in a way that you can't trust them, you can never change the fact that they are your mom and your dad no matter what, right? So the thing I would say here is if you learn these 5 trust behaviors, use them at work, they can apply to your home life or your personal life as well, right? Absolutely, there are parents who will lie to you, and that betrays the trust of the child with the parent, right? When you're mature enough, have a conversation. Say, can you not do this so much? And here is where, you can have a really more authentic conversation. Do you know, every time you lie to me because you want to make me do something or not do something, I don't feel like I can trust you, even though you are the person I must be able to trust the most in this whole world, right? So the you comes into play here. Don't assume, understand, because even when they lie to you, the reason they lie to you, the motive, the purpose, the intent often is very honest, is for your own good, most likely, right? But have that conversation. So you can absolutely translate what you're learning here to your personal life, to more closer relationships. Be, just be wary that you have emotions involved in that. You can't change the relationship. It is not, you're not building trust for purpose in that, but you're building trust for a nicer relationship with this person, right? Paras is true. Usually my bias come from direct interaction with the person themselves. So it's kind of hard to remove the bias. Absolutely. You can when you work on it, right? Just make asking questions rather than assuming the standard of your actions there, right? And sometimes it's easier. You know this person, right? Okay, you always have a bias for Sarah, right? And sometimes bias is positive or negative, right? Anything Sarah does never looks wrong to me. That's also not a good bias to build trust, right? Let's say Sarah is the one who's like always late, always the last one to submit the report, always the one who will promise everything, but she's the reason we will not be able to do everything as well because she will let us down, right? So the first step is to always go into understand mode, question, clarification, alignment, a little bit more detail, right? So if Sarah is promising something, check in with her more regularly to say like, are you on track? Is there something I can do? Did you accidentally forget it, right? I have people I've worked with who are so good at their work. Their only flaw, because they manage so much and they're so dynamic, they're so motivated, they're so energetic, they forget things, right? So sometimes I tell myself, I will remove the bias that you will not deliver as you promise, but I will check into your weakness, which is I know you'll be doing so many things that you so excitedly and enthusiastically you will forget. So I will send you a reminder. I'll say, hey, today is Wednesday. Remember Friday with the report. Do you need any help? Are you on track? Can you let me know tomorrow whether you definitely can send on Friday? Right? Very polite, keeping in check. Right? Now, moving on, the last question I also want to ask. This is a bit provocative. Now, we've talked about the first question, which is which one of the 5 letters you think you do the best? We've talked about the second one, which is which one do you think you least do the best or you want to work on the most? Now, the third one, if you ask someone who you're working with, what would they say you're most trusted for, right? So this again, now it's great if you said telling the truth is your biggest strength. And if you think that's what others would say, fantastic, right? But sometimes you can have surprise answers here too, right? To be honest, like in my answer, I told you sharing openly is what I think is my strength, right? My answer to question number 1, my personal answer is sharing openly. Honestly, when I've asked a lot of my teammates about what they think is one of my strongest suits, they would usually say it's T, thanking others. I do this like, and I told you the story as well, that every time I have conversations with the leaders reporting in through to me, I will always end the call appreciating the work they do for me, because I really do feel that strongly as well, right? So sometimes what you're perceived as and how people look at you, or how people will let you earn your trust, may be a different one, right? So knowing that is also important, because if that's what people are seeing, even though you think it's something else that's you're doing well that's making you earn trust, do more of what people recognize in you, because that will get you further in building trust, right? So there sometimes can be a mismatch between what you see as you do well in building trust versus what people perceive and why they give you their trust, right? So how to figure this out? Ask a few people. Go back to that trust mapping, the ones who are in your inner circle, right? You trust them, so most likely they trust you too. And like, Sharith, you can do this as well with your parents or family members and in your personal life as well, like husband and wife. Ask them, if they trust you, what is it about you that they trust, right? And to be honest, sometimes you get different answers from different people. Look at the situation that they're coming from. Like if I asked my mother, she would say she trusts me because I am almost always reliable. If she told me to do something, I will never let her down, right? This is not the same as what I see in my workplace, right? So like in my workplace, it's the fact that I thank others is what people see me as strongly for. But at home, it will be the reliability piece for me, right? I know for sure my mom or my sister or even my husband, right? They will tell me the simplest thing, like the simplest thing could be like, um, laundry's not done for this week, but I need that particular shirt. Can you just make sure it's done? I would. And they can forget about it for the whole week, but on that day they needed it, it'll be there for them, ready, right? So it's important for me in that aspect, and that's what they see. So sometimes have these conversations with different types of people, see what circumstances they are telling you about what your strongest suit is, do more of it. You would start building trust, and you will visibly see earning trust becomes easy for you, right? Easier for you. Now, I also want, you cannot talk about trust and not talk about why trust fails, right? Now, as we talked about all the things that build trust, I also want you to keep in mind that trust doesn't fail from a single event. And every one of us will break trust with even the most trusted persons now and then, right? Because it's impossible to be 100% perfect. And that's why I say here, it's okay to break it now and then, not intentionally, accidentally. It's okay if you were not able to tell the whole truth, or if it's okay if you were not able to deliver what you promised, or share everything about the situation, or thank a person despite the fact that they did so much, right? It's okay, because trust doesn't fail from a single event. It erodes through patterns, and usually more than 3 times. One time you do it, people will, in their mind, say, "That's very unlike this person, but I don't know, something must have come up," right? Second time you do it, people will still not totally break your trust with you. They will still like, very odd. And good people will come and have that conversation with you. It's so unlike you. You always are reliable. You're always on your deadline. But so far it's been 2 times. So they may ask you a conversation. Is everything okay? Is something going on? Something like that, right? But when you do it 3 times a pattern, right? So that's when people may not feel like they want to have a conversation with you. It's actually the right thing to do is to understand, to seek what's happening rather than assume. But when it's 3 times, people tend of the same thing, right? So 3 times you were unreliable, or 3 times they did something so great and you were unthankful or ungrateful, didn't thank them, right? 3 times people say, I guess I was wrong about this person before. I think this is who they really are, right? So that's when it kind of breaks patterns, right? So be wary of this as well. If something's going on, let people know. If you're going to be, if you've always delivered on time, whatever was needed on the deadline, but you know something is happening right now. Maybe there's a family member who's sick, your child, or something like that is going on that is taking up more time on your personal life, and you can't deliver on time for your work, right? Let your boss know upfront, right? So you're going to need sometimes more time. Sometimes you're going to be not able to deliver it and forget. You're going through a chaotic phase, right? So then when you've informed them, people will not see it as a pattern, even when you miss it, right? So think about trust failing as everything we talked about, you're doing the opposite, right? Rather than being, truthful, even admitting when you're wrong, you're defensive. Rather than sharing certain pieces of information that are important for someone else to know, very relevant, you withhold that information. If you are insincere in the words that you say or in your body language of how you're answering to certain things, people can tell you that also breaks trust. Again, in patterns, right? Not once or twice. Over promising, every time there's this person who will say, like, what? I don't need 5 days. I will give it to you in 2 days. It never comes even in 5 days, right? Breaks trust. Inconsistencies. Sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're grateful, sometimes you're extremely critical. And there are lots of these kinds of people that you can, I'm sure, immediately think about who this is in your organization as well, right? Very hard to build trust with those kinds of individuals as well, right? So these are critical things that people will first watch for a pattern. And when they see 3 times or more coming from you, they would then not have as much trust with you, right? So it's important to make sure these 5 things you're doing, you're good at some things, you're not good at some things is fine, but be consistent in the way you do things. Be consistent in how you improve on the things you're not great at, and you will see that you will prevent trust fails and you will be able to repair trust when you break it more easily than if you let it go into a pattern, right? Now, when we're coming to the end now, and I actually have 2 tools that I want to give to you that you can walk away with after this lesson as well, and actually use this on a regular basis, right? Now, the first tool I shared earlier was the trust mapping. So that one is an exercise that you can so simply do anywhere, even on a piece of tissue while you're sitting and waiting for food to come to your table sometimes, right? Who's in my inner circle today? Who's in my middle circle? Who's in my outer circle? And who do I need to move? Why do I need to move them into a closer circle, right? Second is a trust playbook. Now, remember you answered some of you for the question about what of the 5 letters you're good at, what you're not good at. Now, when it comes to the ones you want to work on this week or moving forward, right? You answer the second and third question, right? So the trust mapping gives you answer the first one. Second and third is what habit will I stop? Like, for example, it could be that share openly, right? Maybe something you want to work with. What is one habit that I will stop is I want to share, but I'm not being able to do that, or I don't end up doing that most of the time because I procrastinate. I want to make it look so perfect. If I want to share this piece of solution I figured out, I want to put it in a PowerPoint slide. I want to make like exercises of what you can do, put it in a shared folder, and then be able to give people access to the shared folder, and then say like, hey guys, I figured out how to do this. Share openly, right? What happens? Most of the time, I don't even end up putting that into a PowerPoint slide, but people perceive me as she knew how to get this done, but she was never willing to share, right? So one habit I'll stop in being able to share more openly is avoid my um, obsession with perfection, right? Just share it in a small email and say, hey guys, I figured this out. I think we can do it like this, and it seems to work. If you're interested to know more, have a conversation with me. That email can be sent in less than 1 minute, right? When you can do something quickly there, what you should stop is if perfection is the one stopping you, the big plan is the one stopping you, do that. right? So that's an answer of what one trust breaking habit I will stop to build further on share openly. One trust building action that I'll start. Now, I said that in that same example as well. I will write an email and just give them 3 lines or 2 bullet points that says, this is a problem I figured out how to solve. This is somewhat what I have. It worked. Connect with me and we can talk more if you're facing the same thing, right? So it could be a simple example like, uh, you know, um, after every meeting, we need to analyze feedback of our participants, right? And sometimes there's this one person who would take a whole day to read through every single feedback. And, we're talking about some sessions where 50 to 60 people turn up to study from our talks, right? And each one then maybe group that into what some of those buckets may be, etc., right? I figured out a free tool online that tells you just input all of those feedbacks. It will analyze for you in half an hour, give them to you in an analytical form of what went well and what didn't go well, right? So these are ways where you can simplify things you want to say. So in the first place, I don't have to share everything about the tool. I don't have to make sure everybody understood how it looks like at the end. All I say is, hey, we've been spending a whole day and one person looking through all of this feedback. I found a way where we can do it in 30 minutes with a tool that is free. If you want to know more, reach out to me. I'll walk you through it, right? Now, the last question is extremely important. Just knowing what you're going to work on, or you're going to work on that by stopping something that's not working for you and doing something different or new. It's also extremely important to check in on your progress. Now, check in on the progress simply could mean asking someone for feedback, but even simpler could just mean in 1 month, have I consistently stopped doing this and started doing this to build trust with this particular person? How many times did I actually do this? Right? So checking to track your progress is another important aspect too. And last but not least, you can summarize all of these 4 uh, answers to the 4 questions above in a nice trust intent statement. And you can do this for as many people as you want. My only caution is don't do it for more than 3 people or 3 situations, even, right? Because it's hard work to change these kinds of behaviors over time. It takes time. It happens over how well you're doing in this check-in to track progress, right? It's just like you want to lose weight, you want to go to the gym, you sign up and everything, but you don't turn up, right? And only in a month you check. I guess I only went twice when I was supposed to go 8 times to 2 times a week, right? When you check your progress, ask yourself, why did I only go twice? Oh, I guess all these things came in the way, right? So change your trust breaking habit. I guess I will stop letting these things interfere. I will start changing the time when I thought I would go to the gym to this time instead, right? So it takes that kind of reflective work for you to become better at it, right? So to do that kind of work, if you aim to do more than 2 or 3 big changes, you're unlikely to be motivated to stay on it. Changing your character, your personality about a way you approach something is one of the hardest things to do. No matter who you are, how good you are, or how much of an executive you become, or how much leadership experience you have, right? So even topmost CEOs of big companies, they don't aim to do 2 or 3 major changes that involve their own personality building into a year, right? So my advice is write your trust intent statement. It could be for one person or 2 people that you really want to build trust with, or it could be 1 or 2 situations that you really want to build trust for yourself with, right? You want to earn trust with. So this is your second tool, your trust playbook. And the last one here, which will help you in your, I said monitor how you're doing, how you're performing, which will help you in your check there, right? So if it is a person that you're working on, this is your weekly trust builder checklist. Now, what I advise you do is once you have your trust intent statement from the exercise before, every Friday night, or if it helps you on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, where you can find maybe half an hour to sit quietly by yourself early in the morning before you go to sleep, when everyone's left you to be on your alone time. Ask yourself these and answer them very, very honestly, right? So some of you, Farah, for example, you said you wanted to work on undoing this bias you have about someone, right? Did I really clarify expectations with this person throughout this week on certain things that came up, right? Or did I follow through on a commitment I promised? Did I actively listen without interrupting? Did I acknowledge someone's effort or vulnerability? Did I apologize or repair a trust misstep with someone, right? I took a risk to open up with someone, to share something more openly, build trust. I reflected on how I showed up in a key interaction. Now, once you have the intent statement there, you could run this checklist for how you're performing versus the person you wanted to build trust with. But I also advise that you acknowledge these truthfully about everything that happened during that week, right? And here, like to Sharit's question, right? You can open it up to both your work life and your personal life and ask, how am I becoming or growing as an adult, right? Am I often clarifying expectations? Am I following through on my commitment? Be the simplest one to um, your parent, for example. You promise to buy these groceries for the week, or you promise to get them the medication or take them to the hospital. Did I follow through on my promise? Did I actively listen to my child when she was complaining about things, right? We often have bias about maybe teenagers that we live with, right? Every time they got excuse about something, right? But did I actively listen what got in their way? And rather than assuming, did I help them overcome that smaller thing? It's like children have excuses. It seems like excuses to us, but to them, it's a problem because it's an excuse to us because we've figured out that, problem should be much bigger than this. This is so simple to solve, right? To them, they haven't. So they are actively listen. And this may be even like acknowledge someone's effort of vulnerability. Could be to your husband or your wife or whoever it is, someone who is finding it hard to open up, but they actually did because they began to trust you more. Did you thank them for it? Did you appreciate them for it? Right? When you missed something or accidentally broke trust with someone who so much trusted you before, did you repair it? Did you apologize? Did you explain how it did, how it made you feel, and how, moving forward, it wouldn't happen again, right? So this checklist can be something that can be done honestly, in a week, right? If you take a moment, just 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and you promise yourself to do this weekly trust builder checklist with yourself, honestly, to have this conversation, you would really start behaving very differently as you mature as a person in your workplace, with your family life, or anything like this. And you'll be able to see visible change in even a month or 3 months. That's how quickly you can start doing things differently simply by having greater awareness through something like a checklist like this, right? So um, this trust action checklist, again, you can take a screenshot, or yeah, let me just put it up there for you. You can take a screenshot of this, or you can just capture this in your phone as a picture and just save it. And anytime you need, just have a conversation about all of these points with yourself in your alone time, right? So I also want to just end by some inspiration, honestly, right? We've talked a lot about trust in stories and structured ways of thinking about it, reflection a little bit here in the chat as well about how you are seeing what's going well for you and what's not, and some tools, right? I want to remind you that trust is a game we play daily, right? And that is why when I started, I said it's a hard skill, not a soft skill, right? Because it's an outcome of multiple soft skills. Being able to share openly takes communication techniques. Being able to be honest takes credibility of knowing what you're talking about as well, knowing the details of what you do well, right? Things like understanding it's actually a skill set to be able to have difficult conversations. There are trainings we do as well, how to have difficult conversations, how to manage conflict conversations, things like that. So those are soft skills, but trust is ultimately an outcome of a combination of of soft skills. And these soft skills challenge us and appear in our lives every single day, right? You get better by choosing to play with it with intention. And that's what we are doing with the tools today, as well as understanding which ones we already do well, which ones we want to do better at, and also taking the perspective of what are people seeing in us as we're doing well, right? And last but not least, I want to remind you as well that, it can be very discouraging when you are in an environment, or even like your family members and your wider relatives and everybody, don't give you this perfect scenario of a culture of trust, right? But trust really begins, it does not have to begin with everyone before you. It begins with you. And it always is about the character you choose to embody, display, and use to navigate the environment you're in, right? The character you choose to become. So think of yourself sometimes when you are in testing environments, you're suddenly in a company where you think everybody don't trust you. Nobody seems to care about trusting each other. Nobody seems to be sharing things, all these kinds of things, right? You embody a character of trust. Like you turn up like you're the hero of that movie you're in, right? And that often is what's going to be the um, game changer of your own earning trust and building trust, right? So I will stop here, which I think is my last slide as well. Would really love to take some questions, comments. What are your reflections of everything you've heard about what we've talked about today on trust, right? So write in the chat box, unmute and ask a question. How do you feel what you've learned? Are you confident about using these tools, and are you inspired about trying to do things differently in how you earn trust? What questions come to mind? I really love to know a little bit about what's going on in your minds right now. I'll give you a few moments to write in the chat as well. Anybody wants to share stories? There are, of course, a lot of usually negative experiences, right? It's also important we learn from those negative experiences. Now that you have this nice acronym, right? What in those negative experiences, you can do a postmortem to see what in those negative experiences didn't go well. Just stop sharing as well so we can see. I think I see someone. Farah, what are your views about broken trust? Are the people who break our trust should have the privilege to earn it again? Absolutely, absolutely, right? Like, people don't intentionally break trust. There's usually a reason for why they break trust. But it's also important to go back to that trust mapping exercise, right? Now, you don't trust this person, obviously. So you put them in that outermost circle. Now, the question to ask is what they did they do it intentionally? Have you had a conversation to seek clarification around understanding why they behaved in a way that broke the trust, right? Now, some relationships can't be mended because that person clearly is not someone who is trustworthy, right? But I think everybody deserves a privilege to earn it again, provided they have given you sufficient reasoning, clarification, and most importantly, commitment with sincerity to want to earn your trust again, right? So this happens with a very hard, sincere, deep conversation. and you're trying to assess what went wrong, and you're trying to have a gut feel about, does this person really care about building that trust with you? If they do, absolutely give them that privilege to earn it again. Even have the conversation about what would make them, what would they need to do to make you feel trusting of them again, right? So that's a difficult conversation to have. Depends on the kind of situation it is. At the workplace, it can be very tangible and easier slightly, meaning to say, if someone always never gave you the report on time or never delivered the deadlines on time, have a conversation to understand why were they always missing deadlines, right? Try to work together with them to say, I can never trust that your part will come in and we will always fail because you let us down. How can I help you be better at this, right? And then to earn the trust again, they would need to not miss a deadline, or they would need to be able to have worked on the solution you agreed on, or be able to give you far enough warning to be able to mitigate that kind of undelivered uh, uh, response from their side or something like that, right? On a personal context, sometimes it can be a bit harder, like I said, emotionally, because you would be able there to then really see whether this person cares about building trust with you. Some people, it's important for you to build trust with them, but they don't see it the same way with you. Those are very hard to build. And those you might need to find a way to walk away, or you might need to find a way that you can manage yourself in knowing that this person is never going to be able to be in the same trust circle as you put them in. And so, how do you move on? Right? So, I hope that kind of gives you a little bit around how to do this. Any other questions or comments? Do also let me know if you feel this was valuable to you, if you understand how to move forward with trust a little bit better than before you attended the session. Absolutely, Farah. Yeah, learning to walk away at times is a courageous but um, progressive way of moving forward when it comes to trust. Right, trust is an emotional topic, even at work, even at home, no matter who you might be thinking about. Right, there will be moments you have to walk away from certain individuals or certain situations. And when I say situations a lot, right? An example would be um, a stranger who I plan to partner with for my business, for example, right? I'm not going to know enough about this person from before. I'm not going to ask other people about, is this person a trustworthy person or not? Our interactions are going to give me a gut feel about whether I trust this partnership or not. And then there will be certain things perhaps that I realize. Maybe I look through documentation, investigate a little bit more, and I realize I sense this is not good, right? So no matter how beneficial the partnership may be, I will have to make a courageous decision of walking away. And when you walk away, you also make sure that this is a solid situation where you have made a decision and you're not going to look back and you're not going to regret, or you're going to make progress, move forward, minus this person or this benefit or this situation or this partnership, right? So don't be afraid to walk away. But if the relationship is important, do your best to try and give the person a chance. Have a conversation, because sometimes this person's behavior might also be that they don't trust you, right? So have all of that discussions, have all of that open conversation. And then if you need to walk away, right? Ashara says, thank you very much for your knowledge and kind support. Always, always, Shara. Any other comments? Any other questions? We have about 12 people on the call. Everybody else is good with. So always know that, all of you are connected with me on my WhatsApp as well, as I sent you all the WhatsApp link for today's session. So stay in touch. It gives me great pleasure to always be able to help you in some way. If you have other trainings that you want, or if you have a question about a particular thing that we've talked about here, I am someone who is always willing to interact with you and give you quick solutions or give you my opinion. So I always like to make more friends this way as well. Stay in touch. You're now in a friend circle. And I really hope what you learned today, you will use some of these tools as well. The 3 tools are there. I can send you the slide deck as well. And all of these sessions, for a lot of you who have attended our previous sessions, the National Training Week sessions we've had, I've also got a recording, which I will post in our website with a resource page, and I'll send you all the links as well. So if you wanted to go back and review what we have gone through in our videos during our online sessions, you always can. So with that, I really thank you for your participation, your interaction as well. A lot of you always wrote in the chat to have a conversation with me. I wish you all the best. Trust is something that will go a very long way in your success at home, in your personal life, in your careers. And with this, I really wish you great success in anything you're pursuing to do, right? So take care. Thank you very much. And stay in touch. Have a wonderful day. Hope you go and have your lunch as well after this and get back to work, perhaps, if you are. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.